Greetings everyone, this is Dave Irwin from One Hit Pixel, and today we're having a brief encounter with Hyperdimension Neptunia Victory. This is a JRPG by Idea Factory and Compile Heart and was published by Nippon Ichi Software America, or NIS America as they seem to want to call themselves now. And it's a turn-based RPG with some unique elements that is a PS3 exclusive and the sequel to the, well, I'm not sure how popular it actually is, but it didn't do very well originally. The Hyperdimension Neptunia series. I think it was quite badly panned in some places. So I'm coming into this a little on the blind side, as I've never heard of this series. I had only heard of NIS America because of the Disgaea series and Idea Factory for one or two of their games as well, so yeah, I have no idea what, well, I didn't have an idea of what to expect when I got into this, and now I kind of do, and I feel it's important to give you a few thoughts. So the first thought that I had, a bugbear of mine in the options menu. Inverted cameras as the default option. Are you kidding me? When I see this, I only have one reaction, and that is to say, no, thank you. Because inverted cameras are stupid. They're confusing, and I don't know how anyone managed to get used to them beforehand. Another thing I tend to do is I tend to actually keep the voice on the English dub, despite the fact that many a Japanese anime fan or whatever will insist on watching it in Japanese with subtitles. And that's fine, and the option to do that is present in the game and is appreciated. But for me, I tend to want to play the games as if someone who hasn't ever come into the whole culture will. And one of the reasons for that is I really don't like reading as much as I used to in video games. I mean, streams of text in, say, a Final Fantasy game is one thing when it's a technological barrier, but as soon as voice acting came into popularity, it kind of made the whole concept a bit redundant. Now, this doesn't mean that the game is fully voiced, in fact, far from it. There are actual cutscenes where you don't actually hear a lot. In fact, you hear nothing at all. Something else I want to address, Symbol Attack. Probably one of the better things. This is one of those RPGs where you engage enemies by approaching them directly on a world map or a dungeon map, and you will fight them. So being able to automatically kill the weaker opponents means there's less time grinding, so I tend to switch that on. Same with the message display. I tend to set it to all at once on the grounds that I hate it when games take their time to display text. It's inefficient. So with that in mind, let's apply it. Probably have to do this again later. I shall check as soon as this game is loaded, and we shall see. So what's the game about? Well, you're a CPU in a fictional world, this one, and each of the worlds is based off a video game console in the classic console wars. So you've got your main one, which is Planet Neptune, which is loosely based on the concept laid out by Sega. So you've got a blatant Sonic the Hedgehog and Miles Tales Proud clone, you've got Mr. Saturn, and the fact that Planeptune features the word Neptune in it, which, for those who don't know, the Neptune was a 32X built into a Sega Mega Drive, which never got released because the Sega Saturn was further in development and the company said, you know what, we're not going to lose money on this. So they cancelled it outright, which is probably the best decision, even though the 32X, when it was released, was essentially a leech on top of the Mega Drive, which already had a leech in the form of the Sega CD. So there are other ones as well, other lands. You've got one based on Nintendo properties with blatant Mario and Luigi clones. You've got one based on PlayStation characters and the PlayStation world, and also you've got ones with Xbox orientated stuff. But that's in the present, and apparently, according to the blurb, this game has a time travel mechanic, which the characters don't seem to have realised yet, so yeah, I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Apparently one of the characters you come across is actually based off the Mega Drive, so as a sort of precursor to Neptune, who is the main protagonist. Let's have a look at the characters actually of this game, because they address one, so they essentially bring up one issue where the audience could be divided. If you hate, and I mean hate, self-referential humour which is hard to get half the time, and then the rest of it is, well, typical, oh look, I'm Japanese, I've got no tits and you have, I'm jealous of you. Just don't play this game. I'm already up to sick of the back teeth of this kind of humour in the game, because it's a bit on the degrading side if you ask me. I mean, yeah, it's part of a culture, but it's a bit silly, and not in the good kind of silly. I digress though. Another reason you might not like it, there's a lot of purple and pink. And the actual style of the characters, the actual cutscenes, they look nice, but they're static. It's one of those visual novel style presentations when it comes to the cutscenes. So again, you've been warned. If you like that kind of thing, fine, go ahead. You'll have a blast. But, well, you might have a blast. I'm not entirely sure whether that will be the case, because no, you might find something you don't like. Actual character equipment and all that kind of stuff is fairly generic. You've got two different kinds of skills. You've got like combo skills, which you can actually edit. So for example, I could put Rapid Rush if I wanted to, which is pretty cool, and I haven't actually done that before, so there you go, the trophies. But that's actually linked to another point, which I'll get to in a bit. You've also got these SP skills, which are your generic special attacks which cost a certain amount of, guess what, SP. You also have party formations, so you can link two characters that like each other, one in front and one in the rear, and they will each benefit themselves and each other. One in the rear won't actually be battling, but she'll still get an experience. So yeah, this girl now has poison immunity and required SP reduce, which are both incredibly useful skills, whereas the physical damage resist and ignoring enemy traits can't do that, unfortunately. This is all based on Lily ranks. There is another character in the present at the moment called Nepgear, who incidentally is a parody of the Game Gear, who really likes the main protagonist but hasn't even met these two because these two are from the past, which is where Neptune is at the moment. And of course these two like each other because they know each other, whereas they barely know this one and they don't know this one even exists, and so on and so forth. Another thing to take a look at is this, the Nepedia. You know when I said something about the achievements and stuff like that? Well, there's actually in-game ones where the rewards actually are permanent increases in stats, and I mean, let's have a look at this one for example. I love gravity. As the leader, jump 100 times. All that is was essentially pressing the circle button. It's a bit silly, but I suppose it is a parody of the trophy achievement system, which has become popular over the past console generation. And then you've got tutorials and all this useful information and the timeline, which helps you keep track of where the story's up to. And that's about it. So what about this town? Well, you can talk to people by pressing on them, but they tend to say what they're saying there anyway, so it's up to you whether you want to listen to a specific person. Basilicom, that's where your collectibles hide. You gain quests in guilds where you complete quests by either killing a certain amount of enemies or gaining a certain combination of items. These can be used in the item development hut or whatever it is in order to create brand new items, which you not only get a copy of each time you collect them, but they then become available in the shop. So that's pretty much it. I'm now going to leave town, so everyone disappears, and essentially what I'm looking for here are the exhausted jellies, which are really common, and Sergeant Froggies, which are a little less common. I will only be playing this up to the actual dungeon bit up to the story end, so because quite frankly I haven't got time to basically go through an entire dungeon for longer than is required. Main reason is the frame rate drops dramatically. I mean, look at this. It's like, this is 30 frames per second. I can pretty much guarantee that's about 30 frames. Whereas beforehand it was running at a definite 60. So this is not exactly a well-performing game. Now, if you're pressing the X button, it basically does this little attack. And that's essentially how you initiate battle. So you just smack things and simple attack. Now, actual combat is essentially moving your characters in this circle, which is determined by where the character currently is at the moment. So you can escape by heading in this general direction away from the enemies, or you can line this up onto your foes. There's this SP thing, SP attacks, which I'm actually going to use against, well, one of the slimes. I think I've got the wrong one, but hey ho. You can also just attack normally by pressing X. And then if you can see where I edited her moveset before, it says Rapid Rush, so... So yeah, you've got all this good stuff. It's a little more in depth than I was expecting, but not by much. And you do get new skills as you level up, but so far I haven't really seen many. Oh, come here. Again, that's an issue in the trying to target things is a bit tricky. Now, both of these girls in the future are CPUs and have access to another form. In the past, however, they can't use the HDD on switch. But you can switch between the two if they're both linked, so that's a pretty decent little mechanic there. As for the voice acting in battles, it's as tedious as one can expect. Now you can see this girl has a different type of weapon, so her hitbox is a little different. But she can still target both of these two, which is pretty nifty. Where to next? I think we just beat this one up. At this point, I'm beyond caring as to whether or not the battles are done elegantly, smoothly, etc, etc. I think I'll show one more cross combo. Certainly flashy, but not exactly thrilling, if you see what I mean. So in the overworld you can also scan for different objects by pressing the square button. These ones are generally obtainable anyway and don't need any extra special effort. The other thing you can do is jump like an idiot. Which, to be honest, I'm not ever going to do again because, well, it's annoying. So let's go back and report this quest in, because, well, that's all we can do, really. I shall show you a cutscene. It won't have the voice acting in it, but I guarantee the voice acting is terrible. Because, well, you've already heard it in the battles, but the scenes that actually have voice acting are, well, ridiculously bad. So let's go report this quest in, grab the stuff, show you a few of the lines. Now you've got this really mesmerising breathing that they've all got going on. It's really smooth. So compared to the rest of the game, where you're in dungeons and stuff, or battles, when the frame rate is capped at 30 frames per second, this is actually a fairly nice change. However, the cutscenes are, well, they just highlight just how ridiculously bad the dialogue is. And as you can see, there's a lot of self-referential stuff. The game quite helpfully tells you some of it, but not a heck of a lot. If you've played games like Disgaea and where the characters change their expressions depending on what emotion they're trying to give, then this will be familiar. But the writing is just terrible. I'm not sure if it's the translation or just the writing in general, but excuse me, I absolutely hate this type of writing. It's stupid, it's juvenile. It's just a ridiculously bad series in general. I can see why people hated the series beforehand. In fact, I'm not even going to press the button anymore. So what did I think of Hyperdimension Neptunia Victory? Aside from the fact that it's pretty terrible. Well, there are some redeeming features to it. I mean, the combat system is slightly innovative, does a few things that not many other RPGs do. You've got some fairly nice visuals in the cutscenes and also in the town map sections, and the actual concept of the game, the setting is actually fairly unique, but the characters are really hard to identify with, and that's partially down to the translation, and it's also partially down to the fact that the voice acting is pretty terrible. Couple that with the fact that battles do tend to turn into a grind fest because of how the quest system is organised, and also the fact that in battles and on the dungeon maps the frame rate collapses to 30 FPS as opposed to the 60 FPS we're used to seeing. It's just not good enough. An RPG needs to captivate me within the first few hours in order for me to carry on playing, and to be honest, this one just didn't cut it at all. I flat out refuse to care for these characters just because of how bad the first impression was. So, not a good recommendation. Anyway, this is Dave Irwin for One Hit Pixel. We were having a brief encounter with Hyperdimension Neptunia Victory. Thank you for watching, and take care.